All right, we got two thumbs up for everybody there. Good morning, all. It's 9:04. I am happy to step in for Sandra once again. She started a book club and she's gone on Mondays. What's going on, Sandra? I kid. I kid. I tease because I love. But I was happy to jump on and come back for chapters 7 and 8, or the quantum abilities, chapters 7 and 8. We've got learn how to calculate and take risks. And then Quantum Ability 8, achieve quantum mental clarity and balance. I was really stoked to be a part of 7 for this one. Same thing with 8, because they're very vulnerable chapters. You really open up to them. But yeah, Mike, take us away as we start off this Monday morning. Like you said, you've had a long weekend. Everybody potentially has had a busy weekend, and now we're going to start the day off right. Mike, talk to me. How are we doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm doing well, actually. I'm glad to be back in California. I was in Denver last week at a coaching conference for a company called ICT. Some of you may have heard Eisenhower Coaching Consulting Company. I was invited to attend that coaching 2-day high intense coaching session with some of the industry leaders in the U.S., team leaders and brokers, and had the honor of being on a mergers acquisition panel on, I think that was Thursday, and it was good. It was probably like the fourth or fifth one of those I've been on, but it's always fun. I was with a guy that's the partner in Real Trends, with the founder, and he heads up all their mergers, acquisitions, and their valuation. So his expertise is putting a value on these companies that come to them for consulting or to help them with an M&A to see what their company's worth, kind of put it in perspective without having to go out and hire a traditional business appraiser, which business appraisers really don't know how to value in general. A lot of businesses, particularly ours, value and brokerages, particularly in a market that's not as strong as it was a few years ago, is very tricky. But this guy is one of the leading experts in the U.S. So it was good. It was insightful, but I'm glad to be back, grounded again here, in sunny California. And the weather when I came back was really beautiful. It was the same as it was in Denver when I left. So it was bizarre. Usually you go somewhere nicer and then come back during, late summer or early fall, and it's still often hot. You get off the plane, you're like, "Ooh, I wish I can get back on the plane and go back to where I
Yeah.
was at." In this case, I got off the plane. I'm like, "What the heck? It feels just like Denver." So
You
whatever.
brought it back with you,
I
Mike.
I
Everybody's
brought the
excited.
weather. You guys can thank me for bringing the Denver weather back with me. So anyway, today we're talking about two of my favorite chapters in the book, and as Adam said, I do get very vulnerable in both, particularly chapter 8. And I had told Forbes Books that when we were putting this whole thing together, I said the only way this is really going to work is if I'm completely transparent and vulnerable in the process of writing it. And it's, I mean, you've heard these tell-all books, right? I don't think there's anything scandalous in the book about me per se. So you're thinking that I got to read this thing, find out what's going on with this guy. I mean, it doesn't read like a novella or anything like that, guys. But I did have to talk about a lot of my challenges and weaknesses and things that I had to overcome through my personal experiences. And I just think that that's how you help people, because again, the vision is anybody that's done something amazing in business, or has grown any endeavor, that they're this bulletproof super person, that nothing bothers them, and that they just show up and they're an A player every day, day in, day out. And really you're seeing a lot of the front facing side of things, that it all looks great. It all looks, like it's wonderful, and really the reality is it's very difficult to
Yeah.
build anything. I mean, what goes on behind the scenes and when you're by yourself is far different. And I wanted to just come out and tell people that you're not alone when you're feeling these things. And really, it's just about knowing that other people have experienced the challenges that you have experienced or you are experiencing, and there are techniques and ways to get through it. And these were the things that I shared in the book about how I got through a lot of these things. So I had to be vulnerable. I had to tell the truth about that, and hopefully, if it just helps a couple people, then I've accomplished my goal. So
It
the
came across really, really well in both chapters, 7 and 8. I mean, looking at my notes, there were a number of things on there that I put specifically, more so on chapter 8, but chapter 7 is where you really start opening it up.
Mhm.
And, the chapters call it, how to calculate and take risks. And it starts off with the Jim Rohn quote. I know Jim Rohn is one of your favorites that you go
Yeah.
to. If you're not willing to ride the unusual, you will have to settle for ordinary. And you go into the chapter of calculating things and figuring out, all right, is this going to be something, is it risk averse, the risk tolerance of things, how do you make the leap sometimes, is it that fear of failure that can be just, it can cramp your brain, and so many things can happen with it, and you really really dive into this one in this chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do, I guess, fancy myself as a risk taker. Any entrepreneur that's done, you know, significant things in their careers, you've had to take risk, right? There's no way to not take any risk and have 100%, certainty on whatever you do. And it is about that. But and I've had somebody tell me one time, somebody close that I closely worked with and admired, just said, "Hey, I mean, you've been the person that I've worked with in the last 40 plus years of my career. You're the person that I've seen that's taken the most risk with things. I've never seen anybody that's taken as much risk as you have in business." And I told that person, I said, "Yeah, I probably agree with you, but it wasn't just risk, it was calculated risk. I didn't take blind risks." And that's how I won most of the time, not all of the time, but
Yeah.
you don't win 100% of the time. You don't bat
And
a
nobody
thousand.
does, nobody
Yeah,
does.
nobody does. You don't bat 1,000, but baseball players, they bat three, four times out of 10. They're amazing. They're in the playoffs right now, right? It's like but that sounds absurd. You can get it
Yeah,
right
so
four
some of the
more
best
times.
hitters hit 27% of the time is
Yeah.
whenever they get a hit, and those we consider fantastic
Yeah, they're
bats.
still getting paid millions of dollars for what
Yeah.
they do, but they hit under 3 out of 10 times. And so I think we're a little bit hard on ourselves when we miss the mark on taking those risks. But and every failed risk, is a learning experience. One thing that I do always say, and my dad told me this as well growing up, is just never take more risk than you can really afford to lose. I mean, don't go all in other words, on one bet. And I've been all in here and there. I didn't follow that all the time 100%, but I can tell you the times I felt that I was all in, it was very, very calculated and thought out, and all the contingencies were looked at, and I just had a lot of conversations, got a lot of advice. I mean, taking risk is not just something you do in secret. It's about going out and getting advice from people that have knowledge in those areas, or maybe they've done what you are trying or attempting to do. And people are really willing to share their knowledge. You think that it's just some secret society that highly successful people are in, or they've got some secret recipe or formula that they're unwilling to share. Maybe in some cases, if they're a direct competitor, they're not going to be, as transparent about things. But a lot of people
Yeah.
want to help you, particularly in this industry, and just finding the level of collaboration that I've been able to experience out there with other brokers, and people in my position, other investors, has been amazing. And it's just being bold enough to have those conversations, because again, we're not solopreneurs, we're entrepreneurs, and collaboration is a part of that process. Even though those people may not be a part of what the outcome will be. Maybe they're not a partner, they're not going to financially gain, but they want to see you win, and they'd love to
Yeah.
help you get there. So don't hesitate to ask, at the end of the day. But really, calculated risk is still not 100% foolproof, but it's not reckless risk. It's not blind risk. So we're using just data in some cases, or we're looking
Yeah.
at past scenarios, and looking at different thresholds that we will need to hit for it to win, and what the likelihood of those situations are. We're looking at, I often like doing SWOT analysis. Some of you may have heard that term SWOT, SWOT, but it's about really analyzing, your strengths, your weaknesses, and that's what's internal to you or the company, and then looking at on external or the exterior, the opportunities and threats out there. And really, I learned that in business school years and years ago, and it's still relevant today, 100 years later, right? It's very relevant, and we use it in our business. We do SWOT analysis pretty much every year at Century 21 and Quantum Realty Group, just to evaluate how to approach our strategies and what level of risks to take based on the situation, because it's a moving target all the time, because what we can't control is what's happening externally. So we
Yeah.
can't control the economy. We can't control interest rates. We can't control the Federal Reserve. We can't control tariffs. We can't control, just, going to war or natural disasters. There's just things out there that we can't control. But what we can control is what we do and what our abilities and what our unique, superpowers are. And we can focus on how we can leverage those to go out and take risks in a time where most people are adverse to risk. Right now, I haven't seen people this adverse to risk since probably, the first half of 2020, which that's when COVID hit. People,
Yeah, and you mentioned
yeah,
that in the book
yeah,
specifically there, COVID 2020, the risks for the company. I mean, the economy, obviously, for everybody, nobody knew what was going on. It was something that was one of the most uncontrollable things that we've had in our lifetime so far. And, speaking of the calculated risk right there, that was a very calculated gamble that you touched on there in the book with
yeah.
2020 and what ended up happening with that.
Yeah, so I obviously, 20 COVID hit March of 2020. I think most of you remember. It's just like when the Twin Towers got hit in New York, 9/11. I mean, people remember where they were at and what they were doing exactly. I mean, I remember exactly what I was doing, where I was at, and what I felt. I could still feel those emotions sitting there watching it on TV in the morning as I was getting ready for work. 'Cause I used to turn on the news in the morning. I don't do that anymore. I think there's just news is not beneficial to pollute your mind with. But
We talk about that in the
yeah,
next
yeah,
chapter.
I do. Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, I used to back then because I wanted to keep up on everything. I wanted to make sure that if anybody ever asked me what's going on out there, that I could talk about it intelligently. I was so paranoid, not knowing, right? But
Yeah.
I just flipped, turn on the news, and then I saw the live news feed of New York and saw smoke coming out of one of the buildings, and I was like, holy cow, what's going on here? And I was just paralyzed. And then I saw live the other jet hit the other building, and my stomach sunk. I mean, it was like, oh, we're being attacked
Hmm.
somehow, right? And a lot of people just died. Many people just died. I mean, it was one of the worst feelings ever. So you get paralyzed, right? And you're like, you just don't know what to do, and it's so surreal. And I wouldn't put 2020 into that same level, but it did have similar feelings because we
People were
didn't know
still
what was going
paralyzed
on.
by fear. It
Yeah,
was a thing.
yeah, yeah. People just didn't know. I mean, we'd never been locked in our homes before and told not to leave, right? I mean, you couldn't go do what you normally do. You couldn't go to work. And so when they declared the lockdowns in 2020, I was extremely nervous. And the first thing I thought is, oh my God, we're going to go bankrupt on this
Yeah.
business. I
Are
mean,
you an essential worker?
right. And we weren't at the time, the beginning of March, thankfully throughout, our strong association at CAR, the California Association of Realtor level, and advocacy, and NAR, their national efforts, we did get deemed essential pretty quick, and we're able to go back to work and do what we do best. But so I think I was paralyzed for about a day. And then I thought about it, talked to our leadership team, and just said, look, we got to take action because we have to lead through this. And we have to continue. We can't just sit here paralyzed and batten down the hatches and just sit here and ride the storm out. We have to sit there and navigate and sail through this storm and get us to the shore safely. And so that's what we did. We put together a strategic plan very quickly. We were able to turn our business into a remote business very quickly, And we just kept going. And the one thing that I said to everybody, because we already started talking about cutting way back on budget and even pondered, okay, if we have to start laying off people, who will be first? What will we do? Who's essential, who's not in our own business.
Yeah.
And I said, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to keep doing what we do, albeit we're going to do it differently, because it's about remote now and not in person. But we're going to do what we do best, and we're actually going to hit the accelerator on marketing and all things front facing to our clients during this time, while everybody else I know is going to be cutting back and retreating and hiding. And so I said, we're just going to take bold moves here and just make sure that people know that we're still in this business, we're still there to help, and that we're not going to let this stop us, and we're going to be as available now more than ever, right? And really it worked. It worked, and we did amazing during that time, and it was one of our best years ever. And most of our agents kept working. They had all the tools they needed. They had all the training and support they needed to navigate the new rules and the new
Yeah.
forms and things that we needed, to do business and show properties and have open houses, virtual houses. We taught them how to do that, since we couldn't go sit in houses in the beginning, but then we could. But there were rules behind that with masks and different
Yeah.
things. So we just said, hey, we're going to be at the front end of this, and we're going to keep moving forward and not laying off one person. We did not lay off anybody during that whole time, while others did. Others did pretty quick, just out of fear. They knew or thought their business would be down. And
Yeah.
so we really, but it was calculated. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to just keep going no matter what, and because we're relentless. It wasn't that thoughtless. It's
It's a balance. You
yeah,
mentioned, caution and courage, trying to find that right balance between the two of there, because you
yeah,
had to be cautionary, but you had to be courageous to make that. I know you and Michael probably spent many a nights, many a days talking about, all right, what should we do? And then finding that balance there's a couple things I have quoted here. And one of them is just a simple, go for it. And you
right.
went for it right there. You knew it was a calculated risk. It was a gamble. This isn't the slot machine gamble. This is a gamble that you're taking on your company, because you know you have the infrastructure and you have the team that could,
Yep.
get you to that point.
Yeah, you had to trust in your resources and your team and what their abilities were. And the first step in all of that, and taking any calculated risks on moving forward and doing something significant, is we have to acknowledge that there is fear. And I was afraid during that time, and I even told my mom, called me and asked, well, what's going to happen with your business? And I kind of joked and said, well, I'll probably be sending my resume out here in the next few months. I don't know. I said, we could, run out of money by the end of the year. Who knows? I don't think we would have, but I was talking out of fear.
Yeah.
But I did acknowledge that the significance of everything, seriously. But at the same time, I knew, based on past, based on the chapters, all the way up through 6, what I had already accomplished through very, very tough times, through the Great Recession. I mean, the Great Recession was, in many ways, like an extended version of COVID,
Yeah.
because we didn't recover that quickly,
Right.
when everything, blew up in '08, and the market just shot down and bottomed out, in some cases 40-50% decline in values and volume, and 18 months of inventory out there, and just, yeah, COVID was really, honestly, economically nothing compared to that time. So you reflected back on how we reacted, what we did, and the decisions I made personally during that time, and went, man, this is nothing if you think about it. Let's just keep
Yeah.
going. And that's what gets you through it, and it gets rid of that imposter syndrome, as the drunk monkeys on your shoulder saying, oh, oh, here you go, this is it. Well, you were just
Mhm.
lucky up until now, but now it's all over, so you might as well just stop what you're doing and retreat or cut back or quit or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to keep going forward, but I'm going to go forward in a calculated and strategic fashion, and I'm going to use sound decision making through whatever it takes, research, and my past experiences, talking to other people. And
Yeah.
guess what? The X factor that you can't plan for and make it 100% bulletproof decision is just that intuition, trusting that my intuition has always been good in business.
Yeah.
I've tended to make on especially big decisions. I've made more good big decisions than not, and I'm going to fall back ultimately on intuition when I don't have the rest of the answers, or this might be a bit of a novel or new experience. And for me, it's really it it's moving from when we make choose to do something significant and take that risk. We have to think about it we have to reframe the fear in our minds. Like, it doesn't mean we're going to be less afraid or nervous about moving forward and doing something,
Mm.
but it's really moving from what I call a place of safe regret to take an intentional action. Because yeah, you can play it safe, but guess what? You're going to regret it every time. Rather than just going out with intentional, planned actions that, yeah, I may not win, I may not accomplish it, but I know that I'm not going to regret doing it at the end of the day. And that's important, and an important way to look at it. And so, but with me, most of you know, I'm very analytical. I always look at, all the, threats, opportunities, and I look at everything logically. And really, I just want to, yeah, I just like everybody, I want to know what the outcome is, what
Well,
will,
that goes back with that intuition part of it. You
yeah,
mentioned the second half of that chapter right there, that intuition should work in tandem with data. It's never going to replace it, obviously. The intuition is so strong in you because a lot of the times, your intuition, you start having that mindset. I do that too often, where like, no, I'm going to be right, so let me just try it. And then let
yeah.
me take a step back real quick. It may be right, but let me use the data points that are there with it to make it feel more confident in going with that. So you can balance that, the caution, and be daring at the same time, but you're still using that intuition. You're just using all these extra data points to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's just like anybody who's gambled in Las Vegas, you tend to do better than the average person. And I know those people. I mean, I'm actually not a great gambler, so I stay away from it. That's where one place where my intuition's not so good, I think. But I will
Those
say,
are different endorphins that are going off in
yeah,
your head. So yeah,
exactly. But those people are using a lot of, experience on how they're playing, depending on what game they're playing. I mean, some of them are playing games of more skill than others. But what's common amongst people that win more often than not, is that intuition. They trust it and they go with it, and it serves them well. So yeah, that has to be a vital component of it. And I think where people, are challenged by, whether to rely on intuition or not is again, it goes back to imposter syndrome, not
yeah,
feeling that they are worthy to move to that next level,
yeah,
and they're really not wanting to get validation internally, but seek it from other people. The problem with seeking validation from other people out there is some of those people, they don't want you to win, right?
yeah.
They're jealous for whatever. And some of those are our own family members. I had people just say, yeah, you shouldn't do it. You're not, what are you doing here? You need to go back to corporate America. That's a safe bet. You worked for so many years to work your way up into your company and have that paycheck and the stock options and the great
Mhm.
benefits and the future pensions. I mean, they had everything. And at the end of the day, go back, what are you doing? And it's like, well, no, because I kind of know how that outcome is going to be,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it'd be a good life, as far as financially, but was that going to be right for me personally, ultimately? And
You want to bet on yourself.
yeah, I wanted to bet on myself rather than, go out and help other people win, or ultimately, I guess, the shareholders in the case of my corporation. I wanted to do something for me and my family more direct. And, where my efforts, I wanted to be a true meritocracy where the harder I worked, that came back to me directly rather than indirectly. And I gave the example of having a stellar year in my corporation, and hitting all my metrics on our division, all our sales metrics. I mean, we just killed it. We were the fastest growing division in all of Hubble. And I had a bonus plan, and I thought, oh, I'm going to max my bonus out this year. This is awesome, man. And I didn't get the bonus. And I went to my boss, said, what the heck happened here? Why didn't I get a bonus? I mean, we just achieved everything, all our metrics. In fact, we exceeded what we had planned for the previous year. And my boss said, well, it's because the company didn't profit. So since the company didn't have a profit, they're not paying out any bonuses this year. And I didn't remember reading that, in my bonus write-up,
Yeah.
uh, for my comp plan. And I'm like, well, I guess we just make arbitrary decisions, but okay, I'm a company man. I'll support that. That's fine. But then the very next year, I'm reading in the public report. I was always curious as to what executives made in our company, and since we were a publicly traded company, I looked at my CEO's comp plan, and what he made the previous year that we didn't get the bonus payout, and he got over $500,000 bonus
It's not bad.
in a year that I was told the company wasn't profitable. So at that point, something, shifted in my mind to where, before I was so scared to maybe take those risks and go out and be an entrepreneur on my own. I wanted that safety blanket
Mm.
of being in corporate America, knowing how I'm going to get paid and when. I said, you know what? I have to get out of this situation, and whatever it takes, I have to become an entrepreneur. I have to start working for myself, and I have to take that risk because I refuse to let this thing happen, moving forward. I mean, I just will not be taken advantage of and worked at the level I was working, and achieving that type of success for others and not get any direct, benefit out of it. So that kind of shifted my risk-taking mentality to where I felt, you know what, I'm ready. I'm ready to take some risks here. And we all often get to that point where we're like, okay, we're ready to maybe take a risk, but then something derails us, something stops us, and we
It
kind
could
of
be
get
as simple
scared.
as just that like we've talked about this in this chapter so much, just that fear towards it's paralyzing. It keeps building
Mhm.
and building and building of something there rather than just a simple go for it. It's the betting on yourself because that psychology of risk that you mentioned in there, if we go around to everybody, who's experienced failure here? The answer is
Right.
going to be everybody that's on here. And you can put an emoji up there. You can raise your hand. You can just say I if you're one of those in here that has experienced failure. Because if it's a completely silent room, I don't think that's the case. I think everybody has, and it's something that we have to do, but it's that getting up. And
Yeah.
sometimes people will fail and they're afraid to try again. And that's the
Yeah.
part to where you got to get past that paralyzing aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think again, let me circle back to the people around you, the naysayers, the haters, the people that are going to knock you down and say you can't do it. And I've always, particularly in the second half of my adult career, is I've taken that and used it as fuel.
Yeah.
I love those challenges. I look at it as they're throwing the gauntlet down and say, okay, I mean, okay, you're going to challenge me and say I can't do something. Now I need to prove you wrong, and I'm going to do
Yep.
it. And I remember, my mom, telling her boss, who just seemed to be a bitter, unhappy guy, like, he never took any risks and stayed in his position most of his career. She told him about some of the things I was working on, and that I had the goal to grow, a large brokerage and the number one property management company in the area and all that. And she told me that he laughed and said, "Yeah, right. I mean, that's never going to happen. I mean, he's being unrealistic." She told me that. I'm glad she told me that because boy, did I kick it into overdrive,
Yeah.
and I proved him wrong. At the end of the day, and it wasn't about just proving him wrong, but I just used it as rocket fuel. And I said, "Okay, yeah, bring it on. Like, I want to hear more of that, please." And then some of the people, if they were close, that they were constant naysayers, I just stopped having the conversations with them because I don't need constant negative reinforcement. I just don't. So then some of those people just, I just stopped talking about my goals. And sometimes we don't want to share our goals with too many people. We keep them and hold them in silence and then just show the results and outcome, right? And that's smart. There's people that you should talk to your goals about that are going to be there to support you, and others you shouldn't. And, then that's the other thing that people are so afraid of. They're afraid of visibility. And a lot of that comes with ego. So if I make this big decision that's very public and it's front facing to the public and my friends and my social group and peers, that if
Mhm.
I fail at it, I'm going to be humiliated and they're all
Right.
going to think that I'm a loser or lesser of me. That's one of the biggest reasons why people don't take, significant risks, because they don't want to look like a failure in front of their spouses, their families, their friends, their peers. And so they would rather just play it safe and rather than look like a loser or a failure, right? And
Yeah, you say that in the book right there.
yeah,
You realize that most fear is fiction in
yeah,
life. And from that part, that's where it's debilitating. I mean,
yeah,
talking about it right now, like Michael Jordan made an entire career off that. I mean, there's a meme that's been going around for the last 5 years and I took that personally because of something that somebody said. Well, a lot of the stories from him because he's a lunatic, but there are athletes, there are people who will just tell themselves certain stories. Did they ever happen? No, but it's motivating them and it's going to get them that drive. They use that as their rocket fuel, whereas we as agents, we hear no all the time. It's one of the most common phrases that we're going to hear in our industry is the word
right.
no, but
Yeah.
we're still going to try again. It's, if the worst thing that happens to us is the word no, okay, I can afford to lose that one and I can continue on until I get a yes, right?
Yeah, and that's where we got to get out of the way of our own ego, because we don't like to be told no. As kids, we didn't like to be told no when we were doing something wrong or we're asking for something, right? And as adults, we get even thinner skin. And the reality is you're going to be told no many, 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 many times. And but we have to get past those no's to get to the yeses. We have to get past the no's to get to the yeses. But if we never experience the no's because we're afraid to ask, then there's never any growth. I mean, we're never
Yeah.
going to advance and move to that next level. So one of the other things I wanted to point out is really, as we're taking risks and moving and transitioning into a new venture or a new business or whatever that is, it's not only looking at what could happen or strategizing on exactly how we're going to do it, what are the steps, what are the smart goals that we're after or going towards, but also having contingencies as well. That, okay, well, always ask on any new venture, business, etc., what is the worst case scenario? So
Mhm.
what could happen if everything goes wrong? What is the worst case? And generally the worst case is not the worst case, right? I mean, it's not bankruptcy, it's not life or death, it's not a complete utter humiliation. It's not
Yeah.
as bad as you think. And so then you can say, okay, if that's the worst case, then that's not that bad. But also, what are the contingencies? So if it doesn't work at all, what next? Do I go back to doing what I was doing, or do I make some kind of lateral movement somewhere and I'm fine, or go back to a former career or day job, if you will? What is a contingency? And so, it's not, again, we're not going out recklessly into battle with our armor and sword and just hoping that we just through sheer will win the battle. But we're figuring out, okay, if we're going to start losing the battle, what do we do? How do we shift? And where do we go? And have those contingency plans in place. And when we do, it's a situation where, man, I mean, really, it's not, if I fail completely, it's not that bad. I don't think I'm going to fail completely. If I don't succeed at the level I'm after, somewhere in between, I'm fine. It's
Yeah.
great, and we just keep building on that, right? I mean, there's a reason they call it the ladder to success. You don't just sit there and leap on the roof, or the top floor of the building.
Yeah.
You go up each rung, right?
You
And
got to climb.
yeah, and if you slip down a few rungs, guess what? You just grab onto the sides and you just keep climbing and keep going up.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. We don't need to be Sisyphus. We don't need to be,
right.
rolling that ball up the hill and just have it come down on us. No, we
Yeah.
we want that climb right there. It's a great chapter there. Chapter 7, the 7 principles for action that you have on it for us is to acknowledge and overcome fear, utilize the quantum risk and reward profile, which by the way, the quantumrealestateagent.com is plugged in the book a couple times where he talks about the quantum risk and reward profile. Touch on that real quick, the quantum risk and reward profile that's on the site.
Yeah, so basically, you're going through and just you're analyzing, what the risks and you're really applying a score to it, like what are the risks and and rewards, and I'd have to show it to you. You kind of caught me off guard on that one.
Yeah, I threw that one out there.
I'd
It's
have to
because
put it
I
up
threw
there.
that on the notes. I actually have that a couple times over there of
Yeah.
the risk and reward profile. But what I gather from it, it's plugged a few different times because I know, finding out it's again that balance. Like, all right, if I do X, will I get this for the risk? And
Yeah. Yeah,
most
it's
of the
just putting
time,
a measure of metrics to it so you can see just visually, is it a win or a loss? And just like at the end of the day, when you're one of the things how we're analyzed how to do anything is we go to like historically we've gone to a whiteboard and just writ two columns, right? You write down
no.
all the
People
good
do it with pros and cons lists. Yeah.
pros and cons list, exactly. So all the things that could go right, and if this thing works, and then what things could go wrong, and do the cons actually outweigh the pros in that case? So that really helps you understand the score factor there. And if there's just too many cons that are going to far outweigh the risks on the score, it's probably not a good idea. But you'll find in a lot of cases that the risk side of it is minimal, and it's not
Yeah.
what you're thinking. It's just the drunk monkey at the end of the day. That's
Exactly. It's that one right there on the shoulder.
really
It's
getting
that
to you.
fear that just gets the
So
brain.
so using a tool like quantum risk reward profile, and actually putting those metrics in, and then assigning those numbers to it, and it really gives you more of a visual, and it becomes more analytical in the decision making process. So whether you use that tool or just a simple pro cons column or visual
Yeah.
there and crossing things out, whatever works for you. I think visual helps because it takes it out of your head with all these things swirling in it. And again, the mind wants to gravitate towards those cons and those negativities and what
Yeah.
could go wrong. So
Yeah,
it's
we
just
talk about that in the next one too. That
yeah,
optimism, pessimism thing that that goes with that. The last few we can talk about this chapter for an hour, obviously, and we've got just a little bit of time for the next one, but we may stay just a few minutes afterwards to finish off the 7 principles for this one. Learn from real life examples, embrace market analysis, financial risk management, develop a conclusive risk management plan, and cultivate a balance of intuition and analysis in the decision making. Chapter 7 is a really, really good one, and people, like you said, it's calculating, finding that risk versus reward because so many times it's built up so much in
yeah,
our head versus just doing it and realizing, hey, maybe the grass is greener or it's not as bad as I built this up to be. It's just, go for it. Nike, like we've said in the past, they made their entire motto is just do it. Same thing. Go for it. Give it a shot here.
yeah,
We'll jump into chapter 8 here. Quantum ability 8, achieve quantum mental clarity and balance. So this one was obviously the most vulnerable one that you had in
yeah.
the book. I thought it's for those of you who haven't had a chance to read it and they're just kind of taking in what we're talking about here, this one I absolutely recommend. It's good for anybody. You don't have to be a realtor. This is something that's just for your life in finding. And Mike, this had to have been a tough one for you to write.
It was, and it was the chapter that I spent the most time on. It was the longest chapter in the book by word count, but it's also I just spent the most time thinking through it and writing it because it was so personal to me, and it did have a high level of emotion in it, and I wanted it to be, not overly complicated, but relatable to people that deal with it. And everybody out there deals with some level of mental challenges, and people mental clarity is challenged often through just life events and experiences and things that happen to them, and it's hard to maintain any kind of balance long term without constantly doing things to help maintain it and to achieve it. And the opening quote in that chapter is our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. And that's exactly where anxiety stems
Yeah.
from, is that we are thinking the worst is going to happen, and we'd really like to know 100% of what that outcome is. And we go in just and start worrying about honestly things that will most likely never happen, right?
Mhm.
And that's just not healthy. For me, I've battled anxiety, most of my adult life. I think it really kicked into overdrive after my dad passed away when I was 35 years old, because I don't know that I really battled it as much before that. I think I had it more under control, but certain life events will shift the chemistry in your brain, and sometimes your mental blueprint, and then those you start experiencing things that you never experienced before, and we just have to start working through it and learn how to deal with it. And it just it gets to levels where it becomes debilitating. I think some of you
Yeah.
have faced that, or maybe you're facing it right now, that it just seems hopeless. The market's struggling, my sales aren't what they were, I'm having financial issues, and or maybe you're having relationship issues, and multiple issues at the same time, and it's hard. And just so you know that you're not alone. You guys are not alone. There are people that are right by your side or in your groups, and that are battling or have battled those things. And it's a constant battle that we're always facing, and we're doing our best to get through. So I go into this chapter talking about how I got through a lot of these things and how I continue to get through them. And one of the things, the epiphanies that I've had as I've really gotten things under control more than not, is just being able to control your thoughts and your
Mhm.
attention, instead of letting your thoughts control you. So, your brain's a tool. I've talked about this before. Your brain is not you. A lot of people consider the brain in your head, that's me. That's my whole consciousness. And it's really the brain itself is a tool that we use. It's not us, and it's not even really our consciousness. It's a tool that we use and that we need to control, but a lot of people let their brains control them, and their thoughts and what they do, and how they respond or react to things. And that's wrong. It shouldn't be any different than you controlling your right arm, left arm, or your right leg, left leg, or whatever. You have the power to control what your mind does and doesn't do, and where your
Yeah.
thoughts gravitate to. Now, I will say the idle mind, uncontrolled, just set there, um, will
You start
gravitate.
going, you can get into a downward spiral
Yeah.
like that. You can get into this black hole of just negative thoughts. Again, goes back to that paralyzing agent that can happen.
Yeah, it will gravitate towards negativity most of the time, if not every time, if we don't have intentional thought
Yeah.
to something more positive. And it's just, think about that when you're sitting alone by yourself, just with your thoughts, not distracted by anything, or maybe you're lying in bed at night before you go to sleep, or in the morning when you wake up, and with no distractions. Sometimes it starts going down to all the stuff I got to do today, all the things I failed at yesterday, and the hard things I don't think I'm going to accomplish today. And really we have to check ourselves. And one of the techniques that I talk about in the book that I still use today is I will actually say out loud the word mindfulness.
Mhm.
And so that will bring me back into the moment of whatever I'm doing, and I don't need to worry about what's happening an hour or two or 8 hours from now or this entire week. I just simply focus on winning the day. So one of my quotes is, just win the day and tomorrow will take care of itself. I mean, all we got to focus on is winning the day. Just like a football team, they need to just focus on winning on Sunday or Monday night. They don't need to focus on everything they need to do the rest of the season. They just focus on winning that one game. So if we just focus on winning today, it becomes so much easier to control your mind and the negativity, but also absorb things, right?
You
And
see what's right in front of you
yeah,
besides
just
looking down the line. It's
yeah.
you miss what can be right there in front of you.
Yeah, and so that's important to think about each day that way. You're not having to win the week, the month, the year, just today, and focus on that. But also the other things that I talk about in that chapter are just finding consistent routines to reduce your stress and anxiety, and improve your mental clarity. And I mean, I'm a big advocate of all things mind, body, spirit. Just making sure you're working out regularly, whatever that looks like for you. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about weight training or, or massive cardio, but things that you're keeping your body moving and you're burning those calories and you're keeping that blood flow going. Blood flow is important. We need to keep blood flow going, and that's a form of, that's the laundry effect of cleaning out bad cells and improving, and bringing in new cells that are operating efficiently and better. It's amazing just staying, just your movement alone
Yeah,
will
staying active.
improve your reduce your stress and improve your mental clarity. But your diet's very important in all that. There's definitely things that we eat, especially for high sugar diets, will increase your glucose, spike it dramatically. And for those of you who can relate to that or have experience, particularly if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, what happens when our glucose spikes? Our stress and anxiety spikes. It's funny. Like it just all of a sudden our mind starts going crazy and
Yeah, especially if you're on the, I mean, for you who's traveling, quite a bit, you're in Denver, you're not at home,
yeah,
you're having to worry about takeout. What are you going to eat? Because it's not going to be
yeah,
what you're used to. For Asians here who we're traveling from showing to showing, we're going to appointment to this. So what are we doing? We're going to make it simple. We're going to go through the drive-through right there to get something that, you know what, I'm just going to have it today. I'll make up for it, tonight when I make something healthy. How often does that happen?
yeah.
Not as much as it
Yeah,
should.
it's
Those are
hard to
those
be
things.
disciplined on those
Yeah.
trips, and I do fall off the wagon. I did a little bit on this one, but not entirely. I ate, 2 out of the 3 nights I was there, I ate salads for dinner, and then I blew it one night. I did stay away from desserts. I think I had one cookie at one of the events. They had some fresh cookies that were made. Those
That's
are
you're allowed to. You
that's
got
a
to give yourself
weakness
that
for me.
cheat.
If it's freshly baked cookies that are still warm right in front of me, I have to
Oh
have at
yeah.
least one, right? But it's just that level of discipline is important, because I know what my body does if I'm not disciplined.
Mhm.
And the other things that I really look at is just you got your body, your diet. It's just having that mental balance. It's about gratitude. So I do talk about, the first thing I do each day is think or write down 3 things I'm grateful for, because the mind can't experience negativity and anxiety when it's in a state of gratitude.
Yeah.
And really focused on the present. So those are some tricks and techniques that I've employed. I know that some of you are going to Tony Robbins here. I think it's this weekend, right? That he talks a lot about that, about being in the moment and experiencing gratitude and really having that mindfulness. And I think he was one of the first people that really helped me with that back a decade ago, because I never thought about things from that context. I didn't have the awareness or experience to
Yeah.
control that drunk monkey and those thoughts and those emotions. And there's just things that you can do to reel it back in. It's not if you're going to have anxiety or stress. It's just, it's when, and then it's how you react to it. And again, most people allow their thoughts to control them rather than controlling their thoughts. And one quick way again is, the moment those negative thoughts start popping in, I'll shift gears and start
Use
thinking
your
about
word.
something positive,
Yeah.
that I've either accomplished or something that I'm going to look forward to. Maybe you're taking a nice weekend trip this weekend with your significant other, your family, and you just start thinking about that. And I'll purposefully get out of that spiral, or that rabbit hole that I'm getting in, and that helps out a lot. But oftentimes, it's you can do all those things and it's still a battle, right? It's
Yeah.
still a battle. We can try mindfulness, we can try even meditation, which I talk about. Meditation is a relative term. I mean, meditation's different for a lot of people. There's transcendental, which is more of that mystical experience, tapping into the quantum universe, which I do believe in. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and I've experienced it firsthand what the quantum universe can do. But it could be just as simple as sitting quietly somewhere in your favorite spot or
Yeah.
outside in nature. You're like sitting on grass. You've got that contact, whatever, and you're just sitting there, just relaxed and thinking, and just cultivating that present moment and being fully aware in that moment is powerful. But sometimes it takes more than just that, and we need help from other people sometimes to identify what our stress triggers are and really develop ways and thought processes on how to approach or process that. And so I talk about in the book about counseling, going
Mhm.
to a mental health advisor that can really guide you. And there's a lot of different people and different practices out there that do different things. But a lot of the negative connotations out there is that, well, if you go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you're loony, right?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you must
it's
be
it's a
broken.
stigma that
It's
people
a
have.
stigma, and it's still the stigma's still out there. Yet I know a ton of people that do it. They just don't talk
Yeah,
about it. But the moment I tell them that I've been doing it for a long time,
yeah,
uh, and then they open up. Well, me too. I mean, it's been great. And for
mhm,
me, I like to be coached in all different areas. I
yeah.
have mentors. I always have. I have mentors and what I consider coaches today, and that's just one of them. That's just one of them. I mean, it's just like if you're playing baseball or football, you have different types of coaches.
Yeah.
You've got fielding line coaches, you got batting coaches, and it's just one of the coaches I need to be very successful at the game of life and in business is I want to have somebody that's helping me process things and think about things in a positive fashion and deal with some challenges I'm going through and really helping me identify what my stress triggers are and then how can I, develop preemptive responses to that so they don't get out of control. I talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one
Yeah.
of the best forms of dealing with all of that, that most psychologists and mental health counselors will practice, with you. And, and then just, being able to create that prioritization of work-life balance, and the importance of that time for recovery on top of that is another thing that I hone in on.
It's
Uh,
a callback that you do in there to
yeah,
to chapter
yeah,
4 of managing your
yep,
time and
yeah,
mastering it. Just something as simple as a good night's sleep. We're starting here Monday morning, 9 a.m. You've been in the office for a while. I've been in the office for a while, and I guarantee so there's some people here who've been in the office for a bit, and there's people here who are, maybe they woke up right at 8:58 to jump
yeah,
on. But while they woke up, did they get a good night's sleep? There's so many
yeah.
techniques, and that's
Another
something
factor.
yeah, there's so many techniques
Sleep.
for achieving the mental clarity and the balance
Yeah,
that you need. You touched on a number of things, whether it's what you do may be different than what I do, what somebody else does over there, and
yeah,
it's important to
yeah.
find.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that well, if you're really a highly motivated, person achieving success in any arena, you're driven is we're always in that fight mode. There's fight and flight mode. We're in fight mode, or that we're always engaging the sympathetic nervous system to where we don't come out of that sometimes even at night or while we're trying to sleep. So that's where we toss, turn, don't get that good night's sleep, and we have to come down from that, or your body's you're going to feel the results. You're going to create disease, bad health, but also you're going to get into that high anxiety, or you may get into depression. You
Yeah.
may start dealing with manic depression, and it just that's where you really gone down the rabbit hole, and you haven't done anything maybe in those cases to that's why you're there, but it's always a challenge, right? And we got to be facing it head on and be self-aware that we do need help in all these areas. We need to be guided. We need to really protect our minds, mind, body, spirit, and have that mental and situational awareness to do it. And make sure that if you're like me, who's just constantly moving and working and been a workaholic, I don't have an addictive personality, but I will say if I've been addicted to anything, it's been work and achieving things. And so I've
Yeah.
found myself, like some of you, working 60, 70, plus hours a week and 7 days a week and not taking that downshift. We have to have that downshift in order to recharge and recover and really, get that stress level back down and as we recharge, the stress anxiety level does go back down and you feel good about yourself again and you're ready to conquer the next week. So, it's through taking those weekends off and spending time with family, taking those vacations and not skipping them And that's, I mean, I know it just sounds like, well, everybody always says, yeah, you need work-life balance. Well, no, there is no balance. It's prioritization. And
Prioritization.
if
Yep.
you're not prioritizing those downshifts in that personal time, you're going to crash and burn, guys.
And it'll create, undue stress, anxiety, all those things,
Yep.
because we work with people that have unrealistic expectations a lot of the time. A lot of clients that, they want this for their house. They think it's worth that. And now that's creating a stress on us. Well, I'm going to do my best, but I know it's not really worth that. How do I break it to them? Little things like that. And that one little piece of stress will start, it just rolls in. It keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, and it gets those negative thoughts right there. And then all of a sudden, it's a weekend that you should have off, but you're answering messages from this same person.
Yeah.
Everybody has that they're dealing with. So, finding that the balance of I think you had on there of professional acumen with empathy is something
Yeah.
that we have to do. Real estate is a very glamorized business, and it's something that it's overlooked. The grind, the hustle, the stress that it creates for people. And so just
Yeah.
admitting that, and like you're saying, it's okay to ask for help for things, whether
Absolutely.
it's the managers. I've got you guys that I can rely on, but I've got other people outside of real estate that I can talk to about certain things as well. It's finding that and being okay with it. Like you said, there's this negative stigmatization to just asking for it of people, well, I don't want to let that person know how I'm really feeling. Like that person probably wants to help you out
Yeah.
most of the time. They don't want you feeling that way. So the same thing happens here. Absolutely. You've got to find that. And, if you don't get that good night's sleep, sometimes it's because while you're trying to go to sleep, you look back at your phone and you're exposing yourself to the negativity that's out there in the outside world. And all of a sudden, boom, there's another rabbit hole. And now you can't get as good night of sleep as well. Everybody does it. It's a thing. It's unfortunate, but being aware of it and then being able to speak openly about it, which this chapter was fast. It was really, really fantastic to read, Mike. I truly commend you. I know
Thank you.
everybody here does too, who got a chance to read it, because it's not an easy thing to do just simply by asking for help and letting people know that this is what I've done. It's okay. And you've done it and you've been successful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I wanted to be as transparent and show people that, everybody's facing a lot of these things. You're not unique, and it's okay to talk about it. There's no stigma. And really, we can seek those strong relationships and that personal support network out there to be able to share these thoughts and ideas. I think that's important to find that somewhere, whether it's your circle of friends or maybe there's a church group that you can have these conversations. There's just find that personal support network to be able to openly discuss these types of issues and seek a great counselor out there if you don't have one, or mental health advisor. It's not bad. You're not crazy. There's a lot of people who do it and use it to leverage and enhance their lives. It's important, guys. Don't be afraid to do it. It's definitely not a stigma, and just don't be afraid to talk about these things, or that hey, wave the white flag once in a while, and hey, I'm just overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
I'm mentally and physically exhausted, and I'm really, what do I do? I need some advice. I need help.
And a
And
lot of times people will
yeah,
be able to see it. They'll
yeah.
see it and they're almost like waiting. They want you to say something, to open up. But people who, they're just it's not even about being reserved. They just have this again, they're afraid. A lot of people are afraid to share the vulnerabilities, which it's
Well,
not an
yeah,
easy
and
thing to
it's
do.
okay. I
Yeah.
think once we become okay with doing it is where we really, start transcending to the next level.
Yeah.
And we just become even stronger, because then, we really learn to love ourselves at that point, and not feel shame, and know that we're human and we're constantly looking to improve, and we're okay with being vulnerable. Those are, you know, characteristics of true leaders, and true, you know, people that are worthy of being followed, are people that can show those vulnerabilities, and really, show that they're not perfect, but, share with other people, this is how I get through these things, and
Yeah.
maybe we can work together and strengthen each other to get through them. So, So that's yeah. So I'm probably most proud of chapter 8. Not that the other chapters aren't great, and not that chapters 9 and 10 aren't a great finish to the book, but I think 8 was the hardest to write, the most cathartic chapter out of the book for me to write, and the most vulnerable I've ever been on a public facing level. Because now, many people have read or heard about that chapter out there, and I'm okay with that. If again, it can help a couple people with some of the things I'm talk about in that chapter, then I've done my job. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great one. And anybody who's on Zoom, feel free to unmute yourself, put yourself on video right there. Because this was something that was a really, really great read. If you haven't had a chance to read this one, I strongly encourage you to do it. It's something that, I took a lot from, and I know others here did too. We've reached the hour mark at it's 10:04 from the time that we started recording this. These are chapters we could legitimately talk for another hour on, because it keeps the conversation going. It's something that you can be open on. A lot of the other chapters, not a lot, but there's chapters where we talk about data points, quite a bit, and seeing what's out there. This one is, very emotional, sense of it part. And there is going to be the emotional part of real estate, of your journey, of your profession. And, we're beating a broken record here, by saying, come to the office, because one of the things you touch on is agents. You said it even just a few minutes ago, we work in isolation so much in this industry. We're doing things
yeah,
on our own. We're not relying on other people because we're entrepreneurs here. We're trying to do this thing on our own. But the support that's there for everybody, especially within the company, everybody who's online right there, the support is
yeah.
there in each office. And when you go in there and you're able to relate with other agents, with the managers, whoever you're talking to there, you'll
Mhm.
recognize that, hey, we can relate quite a bit more because there's a lot of similar situations, whether it's, personally or professionally.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it again. Is it's not being an entrepreneur, it could be very lonely if we allow it to be. We're keeping everything bottled up, and we feel like we're just in this vacuum, and nobody else can relate. And the reality is, you've got a lot of people that are from your home world out there that knows your language, and you just need to communicate it, guys. And don't be afraid to. More than happy to talk to anybody one on one that wants to talk more about it. It's just, the smart people that are really, again, doing well and able to get to those next levels, or people that become vulnerable, or willing to talk about it, and willing to improve their mindset, and really battle those demons, if you will, face on, whether it's anxiety or depression, or just different thoughts of negativity, self-deprecation. Imposter syndromes, like I mentioned throughout the book, is a very big challenge for people
Mm.
in any industry, but particularly ours, because we index our worth against markets that go up and down. And then the moment the market
Yeah.
goes down and our sales go down, we're worthless and we're frauds, right? Sometimes. And we just got to get through that, and transcend, beyond that. And I will say that I'm thinking about starting a new support group for the Las Vegas Raiders fans, uh, to get through the hardships of a team that we thought was going to do very well, and
Speaking of a broken record, yeah, no
their
kidding, man.
quarterback can't stop from throwing 2 to 3 interceptions a game. So other than that, I'm just a little tongue in cheek there, but
No, that's a perfect way, to end it. As a fellow Raiders fan, I will join that support group. So yeah, I'll help you with that one. This is a great hour. Really appreciate, like I said, you opening up to everybody, and people hopefully getting something from this, because that's the goal and that's the purpose of this.
yes,
We dominated this conversation here, but there's, a few people on chat. Obviously, the Raiders remark got people going, so we know people are still listening. That's a good thing. We're seeing those reactions there. But yeah, Mike, this is a great hour. I'll give you the final word before we stop the recording and end this one before we get to the final two chapters next week.
all right. Sounds good. There's one question from Mary Jane on there, said, CEO getting $500,000 bonus while denying those who produce the company's wealth is corporate theft. I mean, yeah, that's a way to look at it. Did I challenge it or just leave? Yeah, I challenged it, but there was just nothing you could do about it. At that point, made the decision to leave the company. I hadn't made the decision to leave to get into real estate because that life-changing event of my father passing hadn't happened yet. But I was interviewing with another company that was bigger. It was the biggest company in my space in the world, and they were interviewing me to head up their national accounts division out of Atlanta, Georgia. So it did prompt me to seek other opportunities. And I mean, I had helped our company win many accounts, national accounts against that larger company. So that's how I got on their spotlight. I outsmarted them and got more business, but it would have been more of the same, I think. So I think the ultimate decision, rather than combat it, was just to leave and go do something for myself and
You
go.
bet on yourself.
And that was that calculated risk and that leap of faith that's paid off tremendously. Obviously, I wouldn't be here talking to you today about this book had I not made that big calculated risk decision.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Wise words from a wise man, from the quantum real estate agent. Here's the book right here. Get it from Amazon.com. If talk to us, we may have other books. If you're an agent and you haven't received a book, let us know. We'll talk to you. But Mike, this is a great hour. Really looking forward to next week, the final two
Yeah.
chapters where Sandra will be back to take us to the finish line with you. Appreciate your time, everybody, for jumping up this Monday morning. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you on Zoom soon. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Adam.